Peace is our goal, and truth and unity are the way to get there.
Thank you.
Basically, where
Have a nice
Free Julian Assange. Number 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the 142nd week of Julian Assange Sydney Town Hall gatherings. Yes, Julian Assange needs to be free. We need Julian Assange to be free. And we need to be transparently informed by our governments. The Australian Prime Minister, Mr. Albanese, is not in favour of transparency in relation to his efforts, his purported efforts to free Julian Assange. He is on the record as favouring what he calls quiet diplomacy. Quiet diplomacy is a euphemism for non-transparent diplomacy. Non-transparency is one of the tools that have long been used by corrupt governments to subvert democracy. Non-transparency is a form of censorship that may be used to keep the public in the dark about government wrongdoing, inaction, or dysfunction. We have no guarantee that Mr. Albanese is any different from past Australian Prime Ministers. We are expected to blindly trust Mr. Albanese to do the right thing on behalf of Julian Assange, though we know that the 5 previous Prime Ministers all failed to do anything. Quiet diplomacy has produced absolutely no evidence that Mr. Albanese is engaged in honest diplomacy. We have no guarantee Mr. Albanese is anything but a puppet of global power. Maybe Mr. Albanese wants to string us all along so that we sit back and patiently wait until Julian suffers a further stroke. Given the urgent need Julian has for adequate health care and the fact that nothing appears to be happening to relieve the situation, Mr. Albanese is looking more and more like a globally controlled puppet. Too many people sitting around doing nothing has resulted in the gradual but horrific decline in Julian's health. Time is not on Julian's side. We don't have the time to be strung along any further. We have to stop giving away our power to ineffectual political puppets. We need to fully realise that we have power, even though our media don't want us to think that we have power. We must realise that we outnumber the corrupt and that there are many ways that we can act democratically to bring about the changes that are needed for Julian to be free. A recent poll, thank you, sir. A recent poll showed that 88% of Australians do not support the US mistreatment of Julian Assange. We must realise that we cannot afford to remain ignorant of our power. We must realise that governments will be forced to respond positively to our needs if we demonstrate our resistance to propaganda and freely communicate our narratives that convey our truthful understanding of reality. Julian Assange is completely innocent, and the only reason he is being cruelly persecuted is because our governments see that intimidating us is a way to prevent more of us becoming awake to their corruption. We need Julian Assange to be free. We need Julian Assange to be free right now. And we need everyone to urgently stand up for the rights of Julian, because the rights of Julian are the rights of all of us. Unity and truth are our tools. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. There is only one decision: no extradition.
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, there's something I really want to say about Julian Assange. We really need to know the truth. Now, we live in what is really a wonderful system, a democracy. It should be, I won't say perfect, but on the way there. Better and better. We can evolve to be better and better. But there's no way that we can do that if we permit government to slyly and subtly do the bidding of other nations. And I'm afraid in particular, in this case, it's the United States. Julian Assange has offended the United States tremendously by whistleblowing, by publishing the truths of whistleblowers. He wasn't even one himself, he's a publisher. But he cannot be forgiven for that. And the thing is, without that truth and the ability to know what governments are actually doing in the shadows, how can we really have the wonderful democracy that we hope for and we imagine that we have? If there is sneaky stuff going on in the background, then we are being fooled and we're all at risk. Now, Julian Assange has been incredibly brave in coming out and telling truths that the American government hated to hear because they were secret. And so he's being punished, and punished terribly. Now, look, here we are with a new government. Albo is proclaiming that there's a change happening. We must have a change. But the problem is, in our society, our wonderful democracy, which depends on votes, people vote, and there's very often vote without knowledge, over-influenced by what the media says, by what politicians say, and who knows whether the ideas that we're being told are genuine. And the problem is that any government that wants to rake in lots of votes, well, wacko, do it by attacking these people who are trying to change Australia and talking about truth. That's a way of raking in the votes. But we don't want to be like that, surely not. And here we have an opportunity. Here is an Australian who has spoken out incredibly bravely and has suffered hugely as a result of his brave publishing the truth, unpleasant truths. I just think I just beg Albo, please do live up to the promises that you made before the election. Please don't just go for the quick and massive votes of people who don't care, don't know much, just listen to whatever the media happens to say. It's wrong. So let's all, please, let's hope that Albo is bold and brave enough to confront the opinion of the Americans. The United States government, which is super powerful and has enormous power over us, even though that is not, we don't like to say that. I mean, Australia, heavens, we're free, we're independent. We aren't. We obey what the American government wishes. And we are very likely to end up being seduced into war also because of the American policies. America, that has been, ever since it started, has been at war for 93% of its time. Just unbelievable. And we have followed them into silly wars, wrong wars. Vietnam, the Vietnamese begged the Americans to support them against the French wanting to come back and after the Second World War and establish another colony, another French colony. The Vietnamese begged the American government to help them to be independent. What did the Americans do? Attacked and caused this appalling war, which we went along with. And then there's Iraq, Syria, so many examples that we have just followed blindly what the American government has and the great American money groups, and we have just meekly, like a little dog, followed, yes, pretending and telling ourselves that we are brave, we are Australians, we're independent. It's not true, we don't act that way, but we can be. We can be. And this, the whole mess that is the incarceration of Julian Assange is just one little portal, a little doorway through which we can progress. We can creep through and look at the reality. Please, let's do it. Let's think logically and clearly and without toadying to foreign governments. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Frances. She's come all the way from Armidale. She set the record for the longest distance travel to a Julian Assange Sydney Town Hall gathering in 142 weeks. Nobody's come from as far afield as Armidale. So thank you again, Frances, and beautifully spoken. You did well. For somebody who said she doesn't have the skills to speak publicly, you did a pretty good job. In fact, a very good job. Thank you.
Julian Assange is a political prisoner of the United States of America. They have set out to destroy him for revealing crimes and corruption of the powers that be. WikiLeaks has a 100% accuracy record, and the way he's being treated is criminal. Back in 2010, prior to what seems to be his lobotomy, US Vice President Joe Biden said, if Julian conspired to get classified documents with a member of the US military, that is fundamentally different to someone who drops it on your lap, classified material. Julian was given the material by Chelsea Manning. He didn't conspire with Manning. Manning had the clearance to obtain the information herself. She needed no assistance from anyone, let alone Julian. The US decided to double down on the lie that Julian conspired with Manning and had a willing villain to assist with their fabrications. They utilised fraudster and pedophile Ziggy Thorterson in their ruse. In 2014, the Rolling Stone presented Ziggy as a prodigy, a most trusted sidekick of Julian. They compared them to Batman and Robin. They called Ziggy a tech savant. None of this was true. Ziggy provided false testimony for the US, which said that Assange colluded with Manning and attempted computer intrusion. They were attempting to paint Julian as a hacker and not a journalist. Since then, Ziggy has admitted to lying in his testimony. A psychiatric assessment presented to a court found that Thornton was a sociopath. Ziggy was convicted of embezzling WikiLeaks and others, impersonating Assange, and molesting multiple underage boys. I know it will be a shock to some, but the governments, agencies, and people behind the persecution of Julian are not the good guys. They are evil and vindictive. They don't care about Julian, his wife, his kids, his family, and they do not care about you. First, they came for Julian, but they will come for you too. Your life is cheap to them. Any pretense of democracy, fairness, justice, or freedom in the West has been abandoned. The powers that be are no longer putting up a facade. It is full-on brutality and tyranny. They want us to know that, and they want compliance. I do not intend to comply with the wicked. Julian's life is worth fighting for. The next generation is worth fighting for. And Julian is an Australian, and it is right for us to stand up for Julian in solidarity. Free and mate, our mate, Julian Assange.
Well done.
While the microphone's empty, I'd like to put in a plug for the New South Wales Police Force. Last week they were called by the Sydney City Council to have us removed, as they have done now for 142 weeks. The New South Wales Police attended and apologetically explained that the Sydney City Council had complained about our banners tied to our flagpoles, because the Sydney City Council believe they own the flagpoles. They've forgotten that the flagpoles belong to us. So I said to the police officer, I said, if we're doing anything illegal, I will immediately cease and desist. She said to me, I can't see anything you're doing wrong, but I better check with my Sarge back at the station. She came back 5 minutes later, and with a big smile on her face, she said, this is a legal protest. This is not a police matter. And I am going into Town Hall to advise the Sydney City Council that this is not a police matter. So I would like to have 3 cheers for the New South Wales Police Force, that after 142 weeks of complaints from the Sydney City Council have decided that we have a right to be here, we have a right to tie our banners up to our flagpoles. So here goes for the New South Wales Police. Hip hip!
Hooray!
Hip hip!
Hooray!
Hip hip!
Hooray!
Thank you. I would also like to make a plug for 2 other actions we're doing on a weekly basis, where we similarly get strong support from the local area command. The first one is on Wednesdays in North Sydney at 50 Miller Street outside the US Consulate at 11 a.m. this coming Wednesday. On Thursday, every Thursday, we're outside Albo's office in Marrickville, on Marrickville Road, Marrickville, where likewise we'll be there at 11 o'clock in the morning, and where we get strong support from the local area command over in Marrickville. So again, I'd like to thank those area commands for their support, and I would like to encourage any of you out there, if you have some spare time on a Wednesday or Thursday around lunchtime, to come and join us. Miller Street, North Sydney, 50 Miller Street, North Sydney on a Wednesday, and outside Albo's office, I think it's 334 Marrickville Road, Marrickville, on Thursday, again at 11 o'clock. And of course, we at Sydney Town Hall here have been here now for 142 weeks, and we will keep coming here on Friday after work. We start at 4 and we go through till 6 p.m. So thank you all for listening, and stay strong.
Free Julian Assange! I agree, he should be released.
Free Julian Assange. Sign the online petitions. It's urgent.
So he went into an embassy and they gave him protection for 7 years. But then after 7 years, the government changed and they cut off. And they kicked him out. Yeah. Have you signed the online petitions? Okay. And get your family and friends to sign. It's really urgent. We don't want him to go to America. Free Julian Assange. Thank you.
Thank you. Free Julian Assange. Do you know who Julian Assange is? No. This person tell you.
He's Australian and he he did something very important. He published a video called Collateral Murder. You can look it up on YouTube.
I'd also like to give a plug for a radio station, an international radio station called TNT Radio. And TNT Radio broadcasts on the internet 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And TNT Radio has its eyes wide open to all the nonsense that is going on in the world today. I have become a regular guest on the Mike Ryan Show, and my next interview is on Monday at 3 p.m. If you can't watch it at that time, it's podcast after that, and it remains on the internet. So if you want to find out what's going on in the world or what's going wrong in the world, tune in to TNT Radio. All the presenters are wide awake and they have fabulous guests on all the time.
Including Tony.
Including me. And I'd just like to finish by reminding everybody that if you join us, you're joining the 88%. The 88% that do not support the United States and the United Kingdom in their perversion of the legal system by incarcerating an innocent man, Julian Assange. Come join the 88%. Let's get to 89%. One final word. I'd like to thank Frances here. She's come all the way from Armidale. We've got people here from Wollongong. Steve is from Wollongong. We've got Billy over here. He's come down from the Central Coast. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you.
Just to be sure why we are here and what is the urgency for being here. The United States are on record as saying that they want Julian Assange dead. Our government, the Australian government, is playing footsies with the partner of the government that wants him dead, the government of the United Kingdom. Our Prime Minister is saying he won't interfere with the legal system of that government. Therefore, that's as far as he's prepared to go to save a citizen of his own country, Australia. So it's up to us, the people, to try and secure this man's freedom. I used to think there were circuit breakers and all this. There were magic words or magic deeds you could do to instigate the politicians who run this country to save this man from certain death. There are no circuit breakers. There's only one thing that will save him, and that is the persuasion of popular opinion within Australia. So get on board and make it known to your political representatives by communicating with them and telling them how dissatisfied they are with the perfidy and duplicity they are handling this matter of a man whose life is in mortal jeopardy. Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange.
We are all Assange.